Hey, did you know that Peter was kind of dumb? And we don't know if Peter was a zealot, a Jewish nationalist when Jesus calls him. We do know that his initial hope was in a physical Messiah who would kick butt and take names. In fact, that's what all the disciples thought at first. Now, Peter's first encounter with the true identity of Jesus is found in Matthew 8 when he heals Peter's mother-in-law. Ordinarily, that alone would be grounds for rock-solid faith among most charismatics today. Keep in mind, Peter is not at the center of every gospel story, but he is present. He's at the center when Jesus sends the disciples out in a boat and then follows them later on foot. And keep in mind, Peter has already seen Jesus calm the storm when he sees him walking on water. And he tells Jesus to command him to get out of the boat and walk, if, in fact, he really is Jesus. He does, and Peter gets out of the boat and starts walking. Everything's fine until the wind scares him, and he starts to sink like a rock. So Jesus grabs his hand, pulls him up, and scolds him for his lack of faith. It should be pretty clear that Peter doesn't understand any of Jesus' teaching, from what defiles a person in Matthew 15, to forgiveness in Matthew 18, to the parable of the rich man in Matthew 19. Things do seem to shift a little in Matthew 16 with Peter's revelation that Jesus is the Christ, to which Jesus replies, "Upon this rock I will build my church." Now maybe Peter thought Jesus was calling him the rock. A lot of people do these days. But he was referring to Peter's revelation that he, Jesus, was the rock. But not to worry, Peter's back to normal a few verses down as he assumes the authority to rebuke Jesus and swears he will prevent him from going to the cross. So Jesus rebukes Peter again. "Get behind me, Satan. You're focused on the things of men instead of the things of God." Then Jesus reveals his deity to Peter and two others on the Mount of Transfiguration in Matthew 17. Moses and Elijah just happen to be there too. What's Peter's response? "Hey, we should make some tents for you guys." There's more, but I'm sure you get the idea that Peter was not the sharpest tool in the shed. In Matthew 26, Peter swears he's different from all the others, and he will never deny Jesus. Jesus looks at him and says, "Actually, Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times before the cock crows." Peter's incensed and responds with even greater determination. "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." Things come to a head in the Garden of Gethsemane when Jesus goes to pray and asks the disciples to watch him pray with him. Naturally, they fall asleep, and Peter gets the brunt of Jesus' anger. "So, you could not watch with me even for 1 hour?" But not to worry, Peter stands ready with the sword that Jesus told him to bring, and when the soldiers come to arrest Jesus, Peter swings hard at Malchus, and instead of splitting his head, he cuts off his ear. So Jesus picks up the ear, reattaches it, and blasts poor Peter again. "Peter, put your sword into its sheath. Shall I not drink from the cup my Father has given me?" Soon after, Peter denies Jesus 3 times. Fast forward, Jesus is crucified and resurrected. The disciples are standing around the tomb talking about the fact that everything just happened exactly the way Jesus said it would. Peter's more confused than ever, so he runs to the tomb to see if Jesus' body is there. It wasn't. Later, Jesus shows himself to the disciples. What does Peter say? "I'm going fishing." So Peter and the other disciples spend the entire night on the water and don't catch a darn thing. In the morning, Jesus calls to them from the shore and instructs them where to throw their nets. Suddenly, Peter realizes it's Jesus and freaks out. Of course, Peter is naked, so he puts all his clothes on, jumps in the water, and swims to shore. Later, they have a fish fry on the beach. That's when Jesus asks Peter 3 times if Peter loves him. The fact that Peter just denied him 3 times doesn't seem to faze him a bit as he affirms his love each time. Jesus replies that if Peter loves him, then he should feed his sheep. Then he prophesies Peter's death. What does Peter say? "Hey, Jesus, you see that guy over there?" He was probably John. "Is he the one who's going to betray you?" No, Peter. That was Judas. Now, up to this point, it would seem that Peter was dumber than a box of rocks. Still, the fact remains that he became solid as a rock and a pillar of the faith. Exactly when and how did that happen? Maranatha.